Work on that. What's up, El Marie? Thanks for joining. We are here with Lana Toler from the Spearhead Group. Looks a little fuzzy on my side, but so I apologize if it's fuzzy. Let me see if I can move it a little closer. We were hoping to get some of the background in to give you guys an idea of what they do here. Looks great. Awesome. What's up, Sizzle? All right, guys and girls. El Marie is an active female TikToker in the bourbon space. A big fan of Maker's Mark, so she loved the Denny Potter interview for sure. Lana did some work you were with. You want to give us an idea, just sort of your history in spirits and
Absolutely.
then up to today, I guess?
Absolutely. I've been in the spirits business for 20 years. I started off my career at Beam. I was there for almost 17 years. Went from a lab developer with liquids all the way through the ranks and became one of the 5 global innovation leaders for our global plans. And then after Beam, after 17 years, I started consulting and working with some other companies that were doing cocktail mixers, Bartesian, if you've heard of it, the machine that makes your cocktail. And then I started working with the Spearhead Group, and I've been there about 2 years, about 2.5 years.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, Dad's Brownwater. I'm glad you're enjoying the interviews. It's a lot of fun for me. It's really fun that I've been able to catch up with some former colleagues and friends, and I'm really excited to be here with Lana today. Like we did a quick chat before we went live. Some really cool stuff that's going on. So we've got a handful of people on. Guys and ladies, if you can, share this out, because I promise you this is going to be just great information. Some of the stuff that I learned in the 30 minutes before the live, I didn't know what the Spearhead Group did. So especially with your female friends on TikTok, make sure you're sharing with them, just so they get an idea of what Lana's done and what she's continued to do, not only with innovations and packaging and partnerships and things like that we'll talk about, but also some of the work with women in spirits and bourbon in particular. So if you don't mind to give it a share, I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's get some folks in here and make sure they don't miss out. Do you want to tell us, we've got all this stuff behind us, Lana. What does the Spearhead Group do?
Well, my role in the Spearhead Group, I do marketing and innovation. But as a company, we are a women-owned company.
Awesome.
And we also are a major diversity supplier for a lot of the big companies. And we work very diligently to actually make sure that our suppliers and that our partners are also diverse in their opportunities and their connections as well. At the Spearhead Company, what we do is we help folks take their brands and elevate their brands using physical brand enhancement. So what does that mean? Part of what I do is I help people take their brands from this is a liquid or this is a package to engaging their consumers into all 5 senses and creating an experience for their consumers. So people go, how do you do, taste and aroma? Well, that's when they get to your liquid part. But as everybody knows, most of the time your consumers are either seeing their packaging on the shelf or behind the back bar, or of course through social media, they're intrigued to try it and look at it. So we really take a lot of effort and care into understanding and learning brands and understanding who they want to be when they grow up. Who do they want to be in 5 years? Do they want to stand for certain things? For the Spearhead Group, we have core values that we keep close to us as we talk about sustainability as one of our core values. If folks say, like, look, when I have this idea, I want to build this box and it's going to be this thick and it's going to do this, the first thing my team does is take a look at what are we trying to actually deliver to the consumer, and then how can we look at the packaging and reconstruct or engineer it in a way that's meeting the expectations of the client, will be engaging for the consumer, but also most likely reduces the cost and the amount of materials used for primary and secondary packaging.
Very cool, very cool. So you mentioned, speaking about the five senses, some of the packaging to go. We'll chat about that in a second. Todd, if you don't mind, if you see any questions on there, if you'll just sort of mentally make notes so I can grab some of those. But keep sharing, guys. I greatly appreciate it. Whiskey, thanks for jumping on. We've got several folks jumping in now. So thank you all so much. Bourbon Jenny, I was trying to tag you and I ran out of my 15 people. So this is Lana Toler. Bourbon Jenny is also one of the early bourbon TikTok folks. So she's sort of taken the helm of one of the first female bourbon TikTokers. Been on there for quite some time now. She does some great content. Got some sunglasses on there. But as you can see behind us, we've got some different brands. Jack Daniels. There's some Crown Royal bags, and we see Rabbit Hole here. So Rabbit Hole, I think majority of us on Bourbon TikTok are big fans of Rabbit Hole and what they do in the Bourbon TikTok community. Their spirits themselves. Do you want to tell us about what you guys do and your part in this packaging?
Yes, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to get to work with Don Hardwick and Zach Austin, who's one of the designers over there at Rabbit Hole. And what we were trying to figure out is how to present their new Mizunara product in a box or sort of an experience that people haven't seen before. There are a few magnet type of boxes, but we really tried to think of this as like a reveal, taking pieces apart to reveal the beauty of not only the liquid, but their bottle and the story of the product. So what we did is we ended up coming up with this type of oak color, and I think everybody knows about the Mizunara oak that they use for this product, and really spent time figuring out how to make the rabbit, it's etched even around the side, to make it feel like it's alive. So one of the first things we wanted to do is make the opening really seamless. It just pulls apart. I know the bottle's not in there right now, but you can see it's very clean. The whole story's on the inside of the box. And then part of what we did is we wanted to be able to see the whole bottle through. Yeah, the whole bottle through. So you could turn this every way and be able to display the bottle with just part of the box. Some of the designers on our team spend a lot of time trying to make it as much of a frame for the bottle so it fits almost exactly perfectly in here. And we created a design for this tongue. It's also a magnet to be able to hold the bottle inside of this box so that it looks really clean when you look at it. And you really focus on the bottle and the liquid itself. So we're really excited to have gotten to work on this box with them. We have a couple other projects we've been working on with them. And boxes obviously is just one of the things that we do. We can do cartons, the thicker rigid board boxes, we've done lots of those. But we even come up and create and design bottles and labels and closures to help a brand go through and figure out how it's going to show its brand equity and its hierarchy when they start launching other products in their brand.
Gotcha. So do you see, obviously in bourbon we've seen just an explosion of brands and new distilleries and things like that. Is that a lot of your customer base today, or is it sort of all over the place? Obviously you've got Jack Daniels and Crown Royal in there. So
I was gonna say it's a lot of both. So obviously the big guys have a very clear picture on what they want to do with their brands and what they want. So I get a directed brief, like, Lana, this is what I want this to look like, this is how it's gonna function for my consumer, and then the engineers and I go back and look at design and make sure that it works for the client and for the consumers. That's when we help them figure out, look, we can take 50% of the packaging out of this, and especially a lot of those larger companies have sustainability goals and actually numbers to hit in terms of reducing plastic or whatever materials in operations. But we get a lot of the smaller, new starting out companies as well, or even a single person that says, I have great news, Lana, I developed this new liquid, what do I do now? So I think, we go all the way back to how to build a brand. And I think that's part of why I feel like marketing and innovation has to go together.
Sure.
Because if you don't make a product and understand what your consumer is going to be using it for and how to talk to your consumer, the rest of what you're putting together doesn't connect. So we spend a lot of time looking at competitive sets, understanding who the consumer is for this product, what they want to stand for, and then what packaging really helps them. So one example is the big companies obviously buy bottle molds that have embossing in them, so you can see it, made into the glass. But what we do is we go and find innovation to help these smaller distillers and or liquid developers come up with ways to make packaging simpler, but also more cost effective. So we go and borrow and build from other categories. So we found this technique that the car industry uses. They're actually called resin labels. And what we do is we make those resin labels into the same shape as, say, your brand logo. So instead of having to pay for new bottles with embossing, you can pick stock bottles of any kind, and I help you physically enhance it by adding componentry to it to make it really for you and your brand and your customer. So those resin labels go on to them. We just launched Cascade Moon through George Dickel Distillery, and they actually have used this resin label technique on their bottles on two sides of it, and it feels like the bottle's been embossed.
Oh,
but instead, cool. It's just technology to be able to put it on.
Sure. I know I had some friends through my career that worked with the bottle molds, and just the expense to get that started for the big companies is crazy, yes. Right? So I can imagine new distillers and things like that. But you also don't want to be that bottle that's asking $65 because the liquid's worth it, but your bottle doesn't reflect that, right? So I think we can all agree that we've seen a bottle that we're like, maybe we're thrown off because it's not eye-popping, or it doesn't catch us to say, ooh, that looks like it's worth it. Like, and I think Rabbit Hole has been one that has definitely dove into that, just that look and elegance and things like that. We did get a question from Sizzle. They asked, has there been a favorite project that you've worked on? Or, I know that's probably very hard to narrow it down to one. Is there one that sticks out maybe in the last year or something like that?
Yeah, this Miz in Our Box is one of my favorites, only because I'm here locally with the Rabbit Hole team.
Sure.
And I was able to go to my garage and go to Home Depot, get different stain colors, paint them up, and a friend of mine and I actually designed the whole magnet idea outside of the scope of this initial project. We're like, we want to build this box. And the idea that we can go into our garages and make prototypes and take it over to their houses and say, what do you think of this? Touch it, feel it. We burned some of the inside of the wood to do a different type of box. So I think the idea that I can mess with and play with and actually create new ideas as we develop things is probably the most fun part of what we do.
Yeah, it definitely sounds exciting. I know we had a conversation before. We both worked for what is now Beam Suntory for many years. I was there for a decade. You were there for 17-ish, right in that window. And to go from such a huge, I don't think people realize how big Beam Suntory is, especially with the Suntory side, right? And all of their spirits and other liquids. But to go from that to a startup, and you said just the freedoms, and that sounds like one of those things that you can play and think outside the box, and then you come up with something amazing, right?
Yeah.
You did mention something about cocktails to go.
Yeah.
So, do you mind to sort of explain? I don't know if you're on here, and you feel free to comment up. Hey, Basic Bourbon, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it. Make sure to share, especially with all those ladies out there. But we were talking about cocktails to go. I know here in Kentucky, it's sort of been a push since COVID, because they sort of said, okay, you can take your alcohol from so-and-so's restaurant because they're losing money because they weren't letting us go in. And you get the styrofoam cup or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's ugly and not appealing. So what are you guys working on with that?
So it's interesting because this last year, obviously, everybody's sort of pivoting their business. How they talk to their consumers and customers, make the transactions happen, and also still give their brands to the people who love them. So as I'm watching, I belong to Discus, so they do a lot of the